Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I am so happy to be here today to launch this webinar series to see a lot of familiar names among our attendees. Thank you, everyone, for get the time to connect, to jump in into this meeting, and to be our companion today, so we can explain to you why all this opportunity will be a very good fit for your centers, for your potential customers, and why we are so happy finally to be all together here in order to work with you through this webinar series. So, first, as we have mentioned in our invitations and emails and marketing emails, um, I would like just to say that this webinar series basically is aimed to start a good connection in terms of recognition. We have talked a lot about recognition. We have mentioned how important the recognition is, but as I have mentioned as well many times in different meetings with you, recognition is something that is in both ways. I mean, we as local people in North America, we would like to know the good things about the MET in the United States, what universities, what institutions recognize the MET so our Latin American students can take that opportunity, but as well, the universities in the United States would like to know what countries, what universities, what the centers are using the MET as a way to promote English education and, of course, to promote education in the USA. So, this will be basically the floor to do all that. But of course, we would like to add another ingredient is to give the students and the people in general that are interested in finding opportunities of education in the US to find in this webinar series the opportunity to understand how the process work, what things they have to bear in mind when they are applying to these opportunities, important tips, important things, but we are not going to do this just by ourselves. We're going as well to invite universities that we are in contact with. They are going as well to drive us to their on their programs, the opportunities that they have, important things that they have to talk to students. So this is going to be a big effort of different parties. But of course, to first start, I would like to say thankful to our recognition team in the United States. Basically, last time that we were all together in an arbor, we come together and we say, why don't we start working together and we finally make this happen, because this is an idea that we had for a while. And we decided to start it this way. So this is why today we would like to invite all the test centers in the region as well. If you had the opportunity to invite some colleagues from universities to open the floor to what is coming next. And it's basically the opportunity to introduce you to what the webinars are going to content and the things that we're going to be talking about in the next months, and as well for you to start thinking about this opportunity as a good thing to share with local universities you are working with your students, because we want to have as many universities and as many students we can, in order to let them know more about these opportunities in the United States. As well, this will be a great opportunity for you and for universities to start having contact with universities in the United States. So, all this is possible because we have a great recognition team in the United States. So, I will be happy to introduce you to Alex Rosler, Audrey Bridgers, and Julie Monteiro. Probably you remember her from different meetings that we have been together as test centers. Julie is our senior business development and recognition manager. She leads all these efforts of recognition, all those great numbers that you have seen. She has led. this to happen. And now she's working with Audrey and Alex in order to get more recognition and more universities joining to this process as well. And as you already know us, Alina and with myself, we are leading all these opportunities as well in Latin America. Alina manages everything in Mexico. I'm in charge of the rest of the region. And we have been pushing you all the time to invite more universities and to let them know, everyone, that this is happening. And yes, today I can tell you this is happening. This is true. We are doing the best thing to do in order to get more students and more test takers for the exam, in order for them to empower their future, have better opportunities. So this is just a little part of everything, but I know that this is going to be very useful for you, for us, for everyone. So saying this, I would like to pass to Julie, who will introduce you to the team and will start today's webinar. Julie, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Viviana. What a beautiful intro. And we are so pleased to be able to have this opportunity to connect again with our network in Latin America. We're going to talk a little bit about recognition in the United States and Canada. Then we're going to get into some basics on higher education system with Audrey and Alex, some things you may or may not know already that are really important for your students to think about as they move forward. And then we're going to end it with some ideas for upcoming webinars. We'd love for your input. If there's certain themes that you are interested in exploring, we would love to hear that today and in the coming weeks. So if we move forward, I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach to recognition. So, we've been working on recognition for a long time, but we've never had as large of a dedicated team of professionals. And so I'm really, really pleased to introduce to you all Alex and Audrey. We each care, we're all going to talk a little bit about our backgrounds, but we each focus on a specific section or territory in the United States and Canada. My section is Central West, so everything from Michigan pretty much north, all the way to the Northwest Territories, a really large region, lots of important schools in all of our regions, and we each are trying to build and expand our personal connections with institutions and to help that flow of student applicants, either students or professionals from countries where they are seeking opportunities to these markets in the United States and Canada. My personal background, I've been in higher education administration since 2009, and I've been in marketing and consulting types of roles for many, many years. I used to be based out of Sao Paulo. I've studied, most of my career has been focused on the Americas, so this is a region and a connection that's really, really personal and important to me. I'm going to hand it over to Audrey.
All right, thanks, Julie. Muy buenos dias. My name is Audrey, and I'm new to Michigan Language Assessment a few months now as a business development and recognition manager for the South. So as you can see, from California to Florida, the entire southern half of the United States. A little bit about my background. Also, I'm based in Oklahoma City, so I'm right in the middle of my region. But a little bit about my background, going all the way back to college, since we're talking to a Latin American audience, I had the opportunity to study abroad in Argentina and Peru, and have since traveled throughout the region quite a bit. And then I've also taught English overseas. I worked and study abroad here in the US. And then most recently, I was in international enrollment management. So very familiar to counseling students on what it's like to apply to university in the United States and everything that that entails. So happy to be here and happy to have the opportunity to speak with you all.
Audrey and Julie. My name is Alex. I'm in the blue area. That is the Northeast. I'm based in Pennsylvania, which is a nice location to have access to all of the great schools in the Northeast. My background has been in international education. My entire career, I've worked on college campuses doing intensive English programs, and I've also done a lot of support for international student recruitment. So I've worked with a lot of admissions offices and tried to use that to our advantage to network with with many schools. And I'm excited to continue to build our recognition. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you both. If we go to the next slide, we'll look at what the picture is globally with MET recognition. We have a lot of concentration in the United States, Canada, and the Americas, really, in the Western Hemisphere. This is where we've had most of our focus with Viviana's team and our team. And then we also have growth in other parts of the world, and we're going to see that continue. This is a publicly available graph or map, so if anyone would like that link, we'll be providing it later. You can click in and see where we have that recognition and as it grows over time. If we go to the next slide, we'll see in the United States and Canada an example of institutions that accept MET in higher education. So thinking about your students and your population, those pathways to higher education in the United States and Canada can take many different forms. One of those might be entering into a language and short-term program at a university. We have several university programs that accept MET, and there's examples listed here. University of Northern Colorado, Louisiana State, Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. There's many different schools that the first step might be into a short-term language program prior to directed admissions into degree type program. Another option is community colleges, vocational schools, technical schools. Throughout both countries, we have many, many programs that accept MET. Some of the really big ones, you may be familiar with Broward College and Miami-Dade College in Southern Florida. Centennial College is a really big recruiter in the Toronto, Ontario region, Orange Coast College out in California. So we span the map in those types of opportunities. And as you'll hear from Audrey, they might be a little bit of a easier pathway to applications and admissions processes. They also tend to be less expensive than a four-year institution. And then thinking about universities, we have a wide variety of institutions from private universities, very small to really public, very well-known institutions globally that accept MET. So really any type of school that your students are interested or program, they could utilize MET to get there. Some of the graduate program, degree programs, University of Michigan, of course, undergrad and grad, Northwestern University, 110 programs through their graduate school accept MET. Florida State, Washington State, at University of North Texas are all really big schools that people are very familiar with. On the smaller end, we have LaSalle University. Temple University is not small, but it's a private institution, and Framingham and all sorts of other schools. Troy University out down in Alabama. So thinking about weather, thinking about conditions, they can apply to any type of area in the United States and Canada that they would wish to with MET. Okay, so we move on to the next one. What about Latin America? Oh, sorry. What about professional purposes? So here we have another part of our work is directly working with the U.S. federal government to open up MET to immigration. You do not need to have an English language exam to immigrate to the United States, but for some professionally accredited programs such as nursing and other healthcare professions, you do. So we worked with the federal government for many years. MET is listed for several healthcare professions, and we've worked with the boards of nursing across the United States. Over half already accept MET. Texas is going to accept it, we understand, later this month. So we'll be adding that really big state, important state to our network. And the ones here that are dark, the ones that are light blue, teal, those are those that directly accept MET to licensure in the United States for nursing and to their states. And the dark blue, those are programs or states where that they are part of the Nurse Licensure Compact, which means if a nurse is registered to practice in, say, Florida, and they'd like to move to Arizona, they can utilize MET as their English language credential in that process. What's an advantage of MET over other exams is that we do not our results do not expire, and we keep those results forever. So for nurses, this is particularly relevant because they don't have to take another exam for that second state of licensure. Now, if they took another test and it's more than 2 years later, those results would have been expunged and they wouldn't be able to verify results. So this is a distinct advantage of MET for any test taker thinking about practicing in the United States. And now let's go to Latin America. So really happy to see recognition growing in Latin America. You can see Mexico Central American map here, and then the South American map. There's clusters of recognition following along where we've been really active over the years, and institutions have signed up to accept MET. If you don't yet accept MET and you'd like to, that's certainly something you can think about, and we would encourage you to do so. And it's a simple process with a lot of benefits. Moving into the next slide, you can see the list of institutions in each of these countries. This is a short list of institutions. Mexico list is on the left. Colombia is on the right. I did mess up the geography, but that's where it fit on the slide. Ecuador, Peru over on the west side with their list, and then Southern Cone institutions. Of importance is, of course, there's universities, there's technical schools and opportunities to utilize MET locally. And the government entities that have approved and accept MET are very important institutions, such as the Ministry of Education in Ecuador and in Mexico, SENA in Colombia, SENAC and in Sao Paulo, and the Brazilian Army. Interestingly, there's many posts across the country where their applicants do need English, and they can utilize MET for that process. And that's this page. And we can go to the next slide. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to Audrey and Alex to talk a little bit about basics of higher education in the United States.
Okay, so I will get us started talking about U.S. higher education basics. Some of you may know this information, and some of you may not, but we think it's really important to share some of our knowledge about U.S. higher education because it can be complicated, and we want to make it easier. So to start, it's important to know the U.S. education system. It's also important to know the types of words we use to describe the U.S. education system. So, for example, when students start, they start in elementary school. Many people will call it primary school, and that's first through fifth grade. Once students move out of elementary school, they'll then go to secondary school, but no one in the US really says secondary school. They'll always say middle school and high school. So middle school is 3 years. Some countries that's different. In the US, it's 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then students move to high school after that, which is 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So 12 years of compulsory education in the US. Every student must complete 12 years, and then they can decide what they'd like to do. Like many countries in the world, they can decide to work, or they can decide to go to college or university. And as many of you may know, we have the 2-year program, and then we have a 4-year program. Many students will choose between the two. And afterwards, there is the graduate school that students would continue to after 4 years, sometimes 5 years. That's okay. Doctoral degrees are also an option that some of your students may be interested in. Me personally, I think that students shouldn't study in the US for a medicine degree, a medical degree, but that's my own personal opinion because it's long and expensive. But this is just a quick snapshot of the US education system that leads into higher education. Next.
Great. Thanks, Alex. So now that we have an overview of the education system, the next 3 slides, I'm going to focus on questions that are most common when considering higher education in the United States. And so first up is, what do colleges and universities evaluate? What are they looking for? When I was helping students, assisting students, one of the most common conversations that I would have is, can you help me with my personal statement? Or how many letters of recommendation do I need? And for the university that I was working for at the time, we didn't require either of those. So I would always feel really bad that a student had extra stress and anxiety about these materials that weren't needed in the case of our university. So we were an assured admission university. We were looking only at a student's GPA and their test scores. Alternatively, there are some universities that will admit holistically. So they will ask for things like a personal statement, extracurricular activities, letters of recommendation, and in some cases, perhaps even an interview. But these are two things to consider when, assisting students, or if students are working or sharing with their parents, what do I actually need in order to apply? Because there's no use in preparing more than you actually need to, or stressing out about something that maybe is not needed. So just important to look at both of those different types of admission for colleges and universities. What is more than likely required, regardless of whether assured or holistic, is going to be the English proficiency, such as Michigan English Test for either admission type. So we went ahead and put the scale here for reference. Michigan English Test does go from A2 to C1 on the Common European Framework of Reference, but that B2 is kind of the sweet spot, or what most colleges and universities are likely going to be looking for. There may be some outliers looking for B1 or C1, but that B2 is more than likely what students will need for colleges and universities in the US. All right, we can go to the next question, or next slide. So after we know what we need in order to apply, that next question is, well, when do I apply? And what do the deadlines look like? And so I've included a few terms here to just be aware of, and these can be helpful if you're assisting students with the deadlines and what these different terms mean. So the first two, we have early decision, sometimes referred to as ED, or early action, sometimes referred to as EA. And the most important thing here is to know that early decision is in fact a binding decision. So while students are going to get that admission that they're after early, they're also going to be committing very, very early to attending that university. And it is binding. So it's very important that students understand that. Early action, they will still receive an early response, but it's not binding. There's about 450 to 500 colleges and universities in the US that use early decision and early action. The others, you might hear the term rolling admission. And this is where an application will open and it will remain open for the duration of the year. As they receive applications, they'll issue decisions. However, it's still important to be aware of priority deadlines. And so even with rolling admission, if a school is not an early decision, early action school, they can still receive a pretty early response to their application. And also they may have other deadlines as it relates to scholarships. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, enrollment deposit. So sometimes schools will ask for a deposit after admission, just as a way to gauge whether that student plans to attend in the fall or whichever intake they're doing. But when to start applying to schools, if I have to sum it up with actual dates, we're in October. So really students that are looking to start in August of next year, this is prime time. I would say anywhere from October to February is kind of peak application season, regardless of what type of deadlines a university will have. So be aware of these, but also know that the months October to February are really the peak time to be applying. All right, and then last, of course, is how much does it cost? Very reasonable question, of course, from students, but also parents. And so the cost of attendance is an actual term that if you want to be very direct with universities, just ask them, what is your cost of attendance? To make sure that whatever school a student is considering is in fact within their budget or their family's budget. And so cost of attendance, it will include tuition and fees, likely housing as well for one full academic year. It may also include other items such as personal expenses, food. So just ask what it includes. But what's really important about cost of attendance is for any student coming to the United States on an F1 or a J1 visa, they will have to show proof of these funds. And so this is completely separate from admission to their university. In order to actually obtain the visa, they will have to put forward the bank statements and the documents to show that they can afford the cost of attendance at that particular school. So important to consider that first. Scholarships, of course, can help. And it's very important to ask what types of scholarships are available. More than likely, most schools will have some type of scholarship available to international students. But also more than likely it will not be a full ride. And so a lot of times I would get asked from students, well, how do I get a full ride or how much will be covered? I will not say that full rides are impossible, but they're really not common. And so it's important that students know, if cost of attendance is $25,000, my scholarship might cover maybe 25 to 50% of that, but it's not likely that it will cover all of it. And then I think Julie mentioned briefly earlier about the community colleges. That's a great route to go. The cost of attendance really can be $10,000 a year all the way up to $100,000. And so there's a lot of options for students. So consider the cost, consider the scholarships available. But all good things to consider. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Alex for a quiz.
Great. Thank you, Audrey. Now, I'd like to talk about some more basics, but these are very important aspects, very important things about U.S. higher education. So I'd like to go to the next slide, please. And I'm asking this information in the form of questions. Feel free to put A or B into the chat, or at least think about these questions. And this first one is asking, the U.S. government owns and operates colleges and universities in the U.S. So the federal government controls the universities. What does everyone think? And you can put it into the chat if you'd like, or just have a think to yourself. This is very important to U.S. higher education because it creates a lot of challenges, to say the least. Okay, a lot of people are putting the correct answer, which is false. So the U.S. government does not control and operate colleges and universities. What happens is that many universities say they are accredited, but they're accredited through these regional agencies. And so there are some standards that colleges and universities have, but they follow regional standards. So there is a Department of Education in the US, and the Department of Education does work with these regional agencies, but it does not control universities and colleges. Universities and colleges are controlled by these regional agencies, the state, or they're private and do whatever they want as long as it's in line with these regional agencies. And this is why you will not see standards for applying to universities across the US. That's why everything can be a little bit different. And that can cause some challenges, which we'll continue to look at. Okay, next slide, please. How many colleges and universities are in the US? Have a think. What do you think? And I want to say that accredited means they're official. How many accredited universities and colleges are in the US? Okay, you guys are good. That is the correct answer. It's actually closer to 4,500, more than 4,000. And these are accredited universities and colleges. When we look at 4-year degrees, we're closer to that 3,000 mark. So 3,000 4-year degrees. Why does this matter? Well, it's important because oftentimes students will say, I want to go to a top 100 school. You know, a top 100 4-year institution, that's 3% of all schools. So there's so many more opportunities to be looking at beyond the most famous schools. And if I were to say the top 100 in the UK, for example, that's more than half of all the schools already. And going back to what I was saying about the regional accreditation, this is important because every university can be a little bit different when applying. So it's important to research a lot of universities. Without the standard government overseeing the standard procedures, it can make things a little bit more difficult. So it's important that you help your students do the research. You know, for example, in the UK, you can apply once to 5 schools because it's controlled by the government. Or in Australia, where the most famous university has tens of thousands of students because they see higher education as a public good. So they can make the university and control the numbers of students. Whereas in the US, the very top schools can be very, very small, and they keep it that way on purpose to make it more of a luxury good than a public service. Okay, next one. How about this question? This is about what kind of words and the terms that students use and that we use when describing going to higher education. So what do most students in the US call higher education? Do they say college or university? Great. Okay. You guys are doing great. I see there are a few here that are very quick with their answers. They know the basics, but that's fine because now we can talk about it some more. In the US, almost all students, and anyone really, will say college. They say, where are you going to college? When you finish high school, will you go to college? Very rare will you hear the term university. This is more of a worldwide usage is university, whereas in the US, we refer to higher education as college. Sometimes, if you hear the word college, you think it's less. It's not as prestigious or as good as university. That is very false. I think if you want me to describe the difference, really there is no difference in the US. But I guess you could say that a university usually will have doctoral programs and maybe a bigger focus on research. But that's just general. Colleges also have doctoral programs, not all, and they do research. And they can be just as good. You know, if you look at Dartmouth College, an Ivy League school, it's called Dartmouth College. If you look at Boston College and Boston University, both extremely highly regarded universities, and Boston College is even higher ranked than Boston University. So there's no difference. Just keep that in mind when discussing college versus university. Okay, let's go to the next one. A couple more common misunderstandings. Public schools are always cheaper than private schools. What do you think about this? A public school is always cheaper than private. Look here at this beautiful pool. You can see the letters L, S, U. This is on a college campus. This is the campus of Louisiana State University. This is a public school with a beautiful pool. So the answer to this, public schools are always cheaper than private schools, that is false. So when you research with your students and you look online, oftentimes you will see the price of a public school will look cheaper compared to a private school. But as I showed you here, this beautiful pool, public schools are becoming more and more expensive because they want to attract more and more students. And so their price keeps going higher. And same with private schools. Don't get me wrong. Private schools want to attract students too. So they have these beautiful amenities like pools and gyms and dorms that are very nice. But the key thing to remember is that when you research and you look online, you will see that public schools will look cheaper when you do your research. So the yearly tuition will probably be cheaper than private. But what you need to remember is that public schools are funded by the state. And the state oftentimes will not give scholarships to international students. Private schools, on the other hand, are much more generous with their scholarships for international students. So you can find private schools. Audrey was mentioning that scholarships are difficult. They are difficult, but if you look at private schools, maybe that are smaller, less well known, they're very happy to give scholarships to international students, and especially from Latin America, because you are wanted on campuses to diversify the international population, and they will give scholarships. So keep that in mind. What you see online is not always true about the price. Let's go to the next one. And one last thing I'd like to speak about is what's important. Audrey spoke about the checklist of what's needed in when applying. How about grades? Grades are the most important factor when applying. Okay, I saw someone write false. I'm going to say true. The grades that students have in high school are the most important factor when applying. But you can see here, there are many factors that universities will look at. But by far, the most important are grades. So you can see if this is the most important line here, and then this is second, and this is third, and this is fourth, you can see the most important by far are grades. So this one has to deal with grades, this is grades, and then this is grades about the curriculum. So these things are so important for universities. Now, if you're applying to a competitive university, of course grades are important. And then the secondary things start to get looked at. So for example, the extracurricular activities, like playing basketball or football, volunteering, being in a club. That's important. You can see here that this score is very high, but it's not the most important. Very low here, but then secondary, it's very high. So before universities look at anything else for a holistic review that competitive universities use, is that there has to be high grades first, and then everything else follows. The recommendations, the writing, the activities, the volunteering, all that is secondary compared to high grades in high school. If you are interested in learning more about competitive universities, universities that are difficult to be accepted, I recommend this book by Jeffrey Selingo. It's an excellent read about why schools are, or how to get into competitive universities. I will give you the answer to that. There's no one way to do it. And he explains why in this book, because every school is different, every class is different, every year is different, and they take all these different things into consideration at different times, and it's quite difficult. So yes, that was what I wanted to say about grades. They're very important. Next one, I think that's my last slide. I think we're wrapping up with the basics of higher education. So thank you very much. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you both. That was fantastic. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put it into the chat for us. And the next slide is going to show you some themes that we will be exploring with institutions. So upcoming webinars, we're going to be inviting key institutions here in the United States and Canada to participate and to provide insights from their perspective on a range of topics. So here's a suggested some suggested topics that we're planning. Funding your degree, scholarship opportunities is one. 2+2 transfer opportunities. That's where you start at a community college and transfer into a four-year institution. Many schools have what are called articulation agreements, which formally support that transfer process, so that when you finish the associate's degree, you're automatically enabled to transfer into that four-year degree. Liberal arts colleges, liberal, suburban, and urban experiences. There's all sorts of different ways of experiencing higher education, college in the United States and Canada, and many different places to think about. And they have a different feel. So we thought maybe that would be of interest to your students to hear from institutions situated in different types of locations. And then focusing in on majors. So if you all have anything that you're interested in hearing about in future webinars, if you think would be really important for your students, let us know. Of course, there's business, engineering, IT, health sciences. Automotive engineering is a really big thing here in Michigan, and we could invite schools that are the top in the world in automotive engineering that may be of interest to certain populations of your students. Maybe the arts. We have the Culinary Institute in New York is one of our recognizing institutions, and a really prestigious school for that field. So these are the upcoming themes we'll be investigating. And if you don't have any questions or suggestions, we'll go to our next slide. And Alina, you can talk about what's coming next.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alex, Audrey, and Julie for the time and effort you took to create this beautiful presentation with the basics of education in the US. As Julie mentions, this is intended to be a larger series where we will be talking about different topics. We already do have our next two webinars and our next two guest speakers. And we really encourage you to invite potential recognizing organizations, students, language coordinators itself, so that they can get to know these institutions that already use MET for admissions purposes, and talk a little bit more into detail, give a how-to students specifically. Basically, today was our brief summary of what we believe could be of interest for students in upcoming webinars, and our intention was to really interact with you guys, get your opinions. And as I mentioned, these will be our next two webinars. They already have dates. So our very next one will be Tuesday, October 29th at the same time. And our guest speakers will be from Temple University. They will be talking very closely alongside Audrey about admissions process in the US universities. So if you believe that you have students that might be interested in going into this very hand in hand with a university in the US, we really encourage you to attend. We will have the director of international admissions, the counselor, and a student ambassador from Latin America. So we believe that this will be a very nice chance to ask those questions to the universities directly. And then we also already have our second webinar in the series for November. This one will take place the 14th of November, again at the same time. And our guest speakers will be people from Rutgers. And basically, we are going to be talking about opportunities to take your degree to a career, how you can make a career in the US after you finish your education. So we know it's really important for students to have like a pathway and a plan once they finish. So we will have the admissions officers from Rutgers and also senior international student advisors. So they will be talking about their experience and some ideas of how students, what to do once they finish, or how to get started on setting up that career path after they finish university, which we know is basically everybody's intention, right? So yeah, we're studying, but our endpoint and our final destination will always be career. So how can you transition from one to the other is a topic that we will be touching on November. So these are, again, as I mentioned, our next two webinars. We will be announcing them, and we will be sending invitations out through our marketing channels. And if any of you have any recommendations or suggestions on topics that you would like to see for future webinars, we are going to keep this momentum going for next semester. So probably February, March, April. So just keep an eye out on those upcoming webinars and those topics. If you guys have any questions, you can always ask me directly or Bibiana directly, or if you have any suggestions as well. If there's anything that you would like to see that you feel that is not being covered, we're always open. So thank you all for setting this time aside. And we are really looking forward to get these conversations going with you and future universities. Somebody is asking here in the chat if we can share the PowerPoint with you. Yes, the intention is to give you guys a summary of what we saw here today and the recording. So if you know anybody that might be interested in taking a look at what we talked about today and a brief summary of the presentation, you will be getting some of these after the webinar for all of you that registered.
We have a couple more questions.
Mhm.
Can I answer that one that was sent into the Q&A?
Mhm.
It asks, if MET isn't on the university website, can the student still submit the score? So first, before I answer this, I want to just say the presentations that we have in the future is a great opportunity for students to join. These are top 100 public institutions in the US, very famous, very well known, have amazing programs and a very strong and vibrant Latin American population on their campuses to help students when they're there. So really recommend everyone to go. And there was a question about if MET isn't on the website, can you still apply? That's such a good question because my answer to this is yes. And the reason it's yes is because the people who read the applications, they're human. They're not a machine. And when you communicate with them, they'll respond to you and they'll talk to you. And so a simple question is, I did it MET, can I use it for my English proficiency? They're happy to respond. And when you attend something like the presentation from Temple or Rutgers, that shows interest. And these are people that work in the admissions offices, and you can send them emails directly and talk to them and say, hey, I attended the information session on October 29th. That helps the application for sure, because then it puts some context into the application. So I really recommend remembering that these are humans that are in the admissions offices, and you can communicate with them, and it can help your application, in my opinion.
And the other question, thanks so much for that, Alex. That's really, really great context, is understanding the terms majors and minors from Isabel. When you apply to the university, it's a little often, at least versus Brazil, where you have to commit to a major early on. You can change a little bit, you can enter and change a little bit, but typically you're going to enter into either general admissions or you're going to enter into a major. And that major will have very specific criteria on the curriculum that's required in order to finish and end up with a degree in that field. It'll be the bulk of the requirements that the student has to undertake and pass. And then you have the option of adding on one or more minors. And that minor can help toward the completion of requirements, credits required for the major degree. But it could also be in a completely different field. You may have an interest in art history, but don't want to major in that. So that might be something that you could take a few courses in and get a minor in a separate field, very distinct from your major. And that enables students to really cultivate their whole self while they're at college. Again, not required. Audrey, I thought you might have a comment on this and wanted to
Yeah, I would just say the major, that's your focus area. If you go in, for example, at least I started university as a zoology major with a Spanish minor. So had I stuck with that, it would have been, I graduated, my degree would have said Bachelor of Science in Zoology. It wouldn't have made mention of Spanish. That was just a separate focus area that I elected to do. So think of it kind of as focus areas. The major is what the actual degree will be. Also, a lot of students really stress out about this the first year. What am I going to major in? When can I declare my major? It's very common in the US, like our higher education is different from other places in the world in that it is flexible and you don't have to decide your first year. Everyone is going to still take general education courses, think a basic English composition class, a history class. And so students can come in and take their time, visit with advisors, maybe take one class in psychology and another one. They have that flexibility within their first year. So there's not pressure. I think students a lot of times feel it, but there's really not pressure within that first year in the United States to really decide on a major. So that to me is a positive thing. It gives students a bit more, they don't have to feel like they're locked into something if they are unsure.
Thank you, Audrey, for that answer. I think it's really important to say this because, for example, at least in Latin America, majors are really closed. So there's a lot of cases where students will decide on a major, go into a program, they will lose 1 or 2 years and then decide that's not their career and then they will start over. So I think this is a really positive thing to promote within those students that are not really sure what they want to do in life. This is such an important decision, right? And I think it's something that really happens to at least Latin American students, that they will start a whole career and then the second or third year they will drop out and start over.
It's the beautiful part of US higher education. Because if you compare it to UK, for example, students studying in the British education system in high school have to start figuring out what their major is. I think students are too young to do that. And that's why I think the US higher ed is that you get that opportunity to have such a variety of different things to look at that maybe you didn't even know that you wanted. And then you see it and you can take advantage of it. So it's great. I think it's one of the key benefits of studying in the US.
Or the other way around, you feel like all of your life you've known what you want to do and then you see it and then it's not it.
Yes.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any more questions, once again, I would really like to thank you all for your time. Thank our beautiful team in Michigan and everybody that took their time to attend today. And we'll keep you guys posted for these upcoming webinars. We are going to be sharing the registration links so you guys can share and promote with your students. Remember that these webinars are really made for them so that they can start to take a closer look into these opportunities that might be a right fit for them for studying in the US. So thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your week. And we'll see each other around for the next ones.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, team. Bye-bye.